This is the 9th episode of On That Note. I am here with Yomi, who is a Chicago-based harpist, producer, composer, singer, bass player, everything. Very, very talented human being. I'm very excited to be sitting down and talking with her. Where I wanted to start was with your song Shokuji. Did I say that right?
Shokuji.
Shokuji. Why do I want to put a U at the end? And so that song kind of starts off with that like A flat major to G minor chord progression. Like really, really like kind of a lullaby. Is that on the harp?
Yeah, I think. I don't remember what it goes to.
Yep.
I was it was on the harp. I did a lot of chopping up with that.
Okay.
Of recording harp and then slicing it into MIDI and then like breaking it up on the MIDI keyboard. Okay.
And when you chop a harp sample, why do that instead of just playing the harp? What effect does it give you that you like?
So the beautiful thing about harps is that it will resonate almost until you tell it not to. So I'm a big fan of clamping my chords, but even still, there's like a ring.
Yeah.
Even still, there's something that sticks around. So when I chop it up, I can kind of get rid of that. And so my goal with production originally, before I fell in love with just producing in general, was to see how many ways I could flip the sound of a harp. So
that's really cool. I would not have thought of that, obviously because I've never played harp. But that's a really interesting solution to that resonance kind of dilemma that you encountered. That's cool. And then so you take those chords. The melody that comes over top of it, it sounds like very 8-bit music gamey, or video game music-y. And where did the chords come first and then the melody over the top, or vice versa? Or do you remember?
I'm trying to remember. So I made this song in my friend's garage. We set up. He edits films, and I was producing. So we had our stations right next to each other on this giant desk, and it was a lot of back and forth with like I wouldn't say he co-produced, but he gave me a lot of like input as I was producing, and I was like helping him with color correction, and so trying to remember is goofy, but it was definitely those chords probably came first just to kind of give something to ride on, and I think almost immediately I chopped because the melody on harp is on top is the harp chop. And I'm pretty sure that came almost immediately, and I really liked that glitchiness that it gave you.
So that's an affected harp as well?
Yeah, that was harp through MIDI.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah, because it sounds very programmed, but that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so you seem in general, and we'll talk about the other song too, but in general you seem very, very comfortable sitting on a set of changes for a long time and using more like textural developments within the song. So why and when did that come about?
Interesting. I feel like I really wanted to, when I first started producing, and I feel like probably when anybody first starts producing, you get really used to these loops, and 2 minutes can be the same loop, 8 bars forever. And as much as I didn't mind that, and I still don't mind that because there's something nice and meditative about like repetitiveness, I still wanted to create movements within that. So being able to have like a constant harp chords coming through and like the MIDI chop on top, but then like very slowly bring in what I think was just a software instrument, but I brought in this like kind of electric guitar noise that just like rumbles low and then like swells and then like kind of carries you into where like the song changes, so I was just starting to think about how do I take that like standard looping that all of us producers do and kind of create my own movements within that. Like, why make 3 different 45-second songs when you can have one song that just has a lot of movements if you can just tie something, like have something that ties it all together.
Yeah, and that's great. That sets the stage cool for when we talk about Go Home Baby that you just released, because that I definitely sense that same kind of loop, but shifting it dramatically via other things on top of that bass line. But You also in that song have the samples of like crowd noise. It sounds like kind of, and then there's the Japanese speaker on top of it as well.
Yeah.
And so you definitely use those as well to create change within a loop. So where did that come about and why?
It started with the Japanese woman speaking. She was just Google Translate, and I was just like writing out just like kind of thoughts and poems that I had, and having her say them just in a way of wanting to get these thoughts out there, but not feeling comfortable of me singing it or saying it, especially over this song because I really liked the direction it was headed, and I don't always feel like a song needs a vocalist, or if it does, I don't always think it needs me. So I wanted it to be her speaking these thoughts, and it's all like love will save the world things that she's saying.
Okay.
But then the chanting coming through is just kind of like the people, them kind of people agreeing with her almost. Being like, yeah, we're here with this. It's like a unified feeling, and then it just drops into this like ridiculousness at the end.
Yes.
But the end of that song was actually like a Japanese boys soccer game that I sampled.
Okay.
So it was like they had just won and they were like shouting and screaming, so that felt like an appropriate response to everything that had happened prior.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. I would not have like put that together. That's an interesting idea of having the words spoken in a different language like that. That's cool. And then the outro, it shifts from like a very dreamy kind of suspended 2-chord kind of vamp thing into like, I think it switches from A flat major to an A flat minor kind of vibe, and much more dark.
Yeah.
And
heavy bass comes in, and then a harp just kind of shreds on top, and these boys are screaming.
Definitely a little bit more ominous vibe at the end. And so why did you feel like it needed that outro, and how did it come about?
So for me, making music is always very much like due to my environment myself, like what's going on. So at that point in the song, we had been in this garage producing this song, and he was producing his film for like 6 or 8 hours. We had just been in there, and finally it's like evening time, and I think my friend had some whiskey involved, and so we were drinking that, and all of a sudden like I just start doing the bass line, and I was like, I really like this. I really like this, but I don't want this to be a whole song. And so it just felt right to like transition into that. And I don't know, at that time in my life, and it's something you move around with like ways that you made songs, but I feel like when I was making that song, it ended up on this mixtape I have called That Harpist, and I was listening to that mixtape for the first time probably all year the other day. And in a lot of my songs, just right at the end, I switch it up. And I noticed that I haven't been doing that as much anymore. But it's just kind of fun that, like, you're already hooked and you're already in this space. So to just kind of be able to, like, not, like, play with, like, the listener's emotions, but to just kind of be like, and here's this, because you're already in it, and you're not going to wait for the next song to bring you there,
Got it. That's cool. And so was that song all done in one day?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really crazy. That's really cool. And then switching gears to talk about the single you just put out on the 28th. So that song starts off with a pretty cool bass line. Was that just something you jammed on and figured out, or how was it created?
Okay, so I've only been playing bass for like officially a year now. I think I came up with that bass line in like the first 2 months I was playing, and I'll show you why. Because it is the easiest possible. It's all, the first 3 notes are all open. So if you're not playing bass and you don't know where to start, and like it's taken me so long to understand like how to maneuver around, like harps are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you have these little levers that give you half steps.
Yeah.
Basses are set up completely different. So my brain is like, okay, my fingers know how to hang out on the strings, like I can press down, I have the dexterity, but what am I doing? So I was able to start with the open, which you can't really probably hear, but I started just with open notes, and then just like fiddled around.
Yeah.
So this was like month 1 or 2 of playing bass, and I was like, there's something beautiful about how simple this is and how groovy this is. And it originally was just like an 8-bar loop in Ableton for probably 6 or 7 months, and I called it the Seinfeld groove because it was just like me trying to slap the bass a bit. But I don't know, I always find something beautiful when someone who doesn't know how to play an instrument tries. Like, I love when people who don't play harp try to play my harp, because they come at it at such a different direction than me, that the simple things that they're playing will end up being like so beautiful, and I'm sitting here trying to come up with these like masterpieces that are like, yeah, but those 2 notes sounded really nice together.
Yeah.
So why am I like whatever? So with bass and with that song, it just started with, hey, here's some open notes. Maybe if I press this fret, I don't know what it means, it'll sound cool, and then I just rolled with it.
That's really cool and poignant in that, like, yes, I've definitely seen times where, like, you give somebody something who's just starting and you're like, man, they're better than I am already. Like, like they get it. I don't get it.
They just played like 3 notes and you're like, yes.
That's what I was looking for. That simple bass line kind of, was that the first part of that song that you came up with?
I'd say the bass line probably came first, and then just the phrase "go home, baby." I had been saying it jokingly for like 6 or 7 months before I even wrote the song. It would be like, I'm at a show and there's some person there who's been like hitting me up on Instagram who I'm just really not trying to talk to, and then they're really close by and I'm with my girls and I'm like, he needs to go home, baby, he needs to go home. So like, it was just a goofy thing I was saying on my own for a while, and then it just turned into one of those things where like we were saying it enough and it was like a goofy thing going on enough that I was like, well, if this is our like mini anthem, maybe I can like bring that to a larger scale. And it just took having more inspiration from goofy people via the internet for me to really build the song together. We're in a day and age where people say and do and act completely different online than they would in person, and I'm sure everybody has this experience. I know, or I feel like a young woman probably have it a little bit more.
I'm sure.
And then especially you're putting yourself out there as a musician and putting yourself out there as an artist, and then you're just really opening the door for people to be really silly. So "Go Home, Baby" was like my response to that.
That's good. Yeah, that makes sense. I am sure. I'm sure. And so then it moves on. It kind of does like that first verse section, and then it goes into like a little sample chop on just the down.
Yeah.
What are you using to trigger that specifically? Is that your Alesis that you're using? Okay.
Yeah.
And then why that word?
Because I really liked how I said, or I really liked when I was coming to and singing the down, and I have like a little melody that I like, or harmonies that I put when I was talking about how they were only hitting me up because they wanted me to go down. And I just wanted to hear what me saying that word sounded like. So it was purely for, like, aesthetics the wrong word, but it was purely just for, I was interested in hearing how that sounded like. I have fun playing around with my vocals in Ableton because it's really easy to take anything and sample it. I'm sure that's true for anything else, but Ableton's the software I use. So I take the time to just hear what a lot of things would sound like pitched often, and I throw away 75% of it, but I really just liked that. I could see myself dancing to it. I could see like a remix juke beat with like that down being like pretty prevalent.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, there's a word too, because when you say the word down, you sing the downward melody. I forgot what the word is. All my professors would be mad at me. But there's a word for like when what you're singing, like the melody reflects the actual word that you're singing.
Oh, cool.
I can't remember what it is. I'll look it up later. But so I did notice that too. And then it transitions into kind of like there's that really invasive synth noise that comes in. What is that, and where did it come from as well?
That was definitely, so I don't have too many like plugins and stuff in Ableton, so it was probably a stock sound that I took the time to just I like to, you know, see if there's a way you could make it not a stock sound. So I definitely was playing around with some effects on that, and then when I like started just playing it on the keys with the beat in the background, I was like, this is getting funky. I really like this. I'm going to stay here. I don't normally make funky music, or, well, I don't normally have anything in mind when I'm making music. So when you're able to finally get a taste of, like, a genre that, like, your production's leaning towards, it's like, all right, let's go there.
And then it ends with the very, like, you change from a more... I mean, you're singing, but it's a more conversational tone into, like, that very, like, pretty harmonized kind of outro section. And in that sense, there's that change kind of in the shift, but it's still over the same loop of the bass line. So why did you feel like it needed that at the end?
Oh, just like singing at the end?
Yeah. The kind of descending, whatever key it's in. It starts on a B, I remember that.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. I feel like so that song was one of those things that hadn't come together. I had pieces of it for months. That was like the bass line's over here. I'm jokingly saying this. I had like probably like a demo at one point in February where I was really just saying "Go home, baby," and I think I had like just the first half of like the first verse, and then I sat down. And it was after just like another incident happened where it was just like, geez Louise, what is everybody out here doing? Go home! Yeah. I came home, and that song was just another thing that kind of fell together in one sitting. Because I'm the kind of person that if I'm starting a song, if it takes 10 hours to finish it, I will probably not leave this chair for 10 hours. And so I just sat down and I started writing all of the things, and it was just I like movements, I like changes. I'm not a rapper, so to like keep that talking going on throughout the whole song just doesn't feel right to me. And then adding in that vocal and like how I'm singing it and everything just kind of felt like final words to like whoever, and that it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be aggressive, like this whole song doesn't have to be aggressive. It's just kind of getting the thoughts out and having different ways to present it, whether it's talky, whether it's when I'm kind of chopping my own vocals up in the middle talking about someone in my DMs, or when it's at the end and I'm singing it, it's like all kind of generally saying the same thing, but it's like, here, I just said it to you in 3 different ways.
I get it. Yeah.
So if you're still confused, now that's your problem.
Yeah. And then the last thing from that song I do want to ask about too, because the drum, did you program the drums on that as well?
Yeah.
Because the drum beat is really interesting because it's got that like steady 1, 2, 3, but then the last snare is on the of the 4, where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool vibe. Where did that come from, and how did it fit in with the song?
I want to say that when I was building the drums for this song, I was trying to be inspired by Missy Elliott.
Okay.
I love her, and I don't think... well, I think she gets enough credit, but she could always get more credit. You know, she's awesome. But I was just trying to, like, kind of bring it back to, like, what's, like simple enough. Like, I didn't want to have, like, too much going on in the drums, but, like, where does just, like, nudging things and moving, like, just these sounds, like, what space can that put you in? You know? So it was, like, I think I spent a lot of time just on that drum loop, just sitting in it, and then hearing the snare here and being like, let's move it there. Okay, I'm liking this feel here. Okay, let's get that weird, like, cowbell bell, whatever thing.
It sounds like some sort of hand percussion comes in the middle section, like, is it like a bongo or a conga, like some sort of sample like that?
Yeah.
Unless you're actually playing the bongo.
No,
Okay.
sample.
And then so the other thing I like to do is there's 2 questions I usually ask everybody, which is like, what was your musical education process like? Like, how did you learn to be able to do all of these things?
Okay. Mainly, I was classically taught from 8 years old till like 14 or something, 15. And then I stepped away from that, and it's all been like self-taught or friend-taught since then. I stepped away from the harp for a bit, and when I came back to it, it was like, okay, classical music wasn't working out for me and like my connection to this thing. But once I started writing my own music, it was like, oh, this is my girl, this is my thing. And so I came to Chicago and came back, and I really started hustling myself as like a studio musician. So anywhere I could, if people were having shows, if I could tell that in their like even live sets, if they were like with instruments, if they're like playing on a drum pad, if they're doing something that shows that they have any like production, anything, I would reach out to them and say like, hey, I'm a harpist, if you ever want me to just plug into what you got, we can figure things out. So really quickly I started working with just a ton of musicians and producers in Chicago, and I made it known that I was here to learn, and so I'd ask a lot of questions. So like production wise, like I've always like kind of just stared over people's shoulders while they were working, and then I finally had a friend gift me Ableton, and so then I just started mainly working with producers who were in Ableton for a bit to really kind of see, you know, how and what I can learn. And so it started with classical training, which just taught me how to get my hands on a harp and how do I hold it and how do I move, and like I learned a lot of good like practices and like exercises for like my downtime from that. But now I feel like all of like my roots in music are like just via my own teachings and my friends.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then the other question I like to ask is like, what do you feel like music has given you? What have you gained from it?
So much. The music has given me a purpose, it's given me a community, it's given me an outlet for anything and everything, from like your best day to your worst day to this silly dude in your DMs, you know? Like and it's also, I don't know, at one point in my life I studied fine art, and I was actually doing like oil paintings, and I was like just in a different space with creation, and moving into music, it's like feels almost like a similar process, but you're just like painting waves, and you're just like, how do I fill this room? So like with Shokuji, it was just like, how does this song feel? And like I don't think I have, what's it called when you see colors with sound? Synesthesia. I don't think I have synesthesia, but I think I have a good imagination. So when I'm like sitting with this song, I really do kind of picture the space and the whatever, and being able to put myself in that space, or an audience, or anyone in that space, and then the connection that comes from that, like it's like once you kind of find that thing that you love and you just go crazy with it, there's like infinite games, you know. Every show I play, I connect with a new person, you know. Every time I put a song out there, I meet as many goofy people are online. It's so cool how many people get connected just from anything that you put out. So I don't know. Everything.
That sums it up.
Yeah.
So lastly, anything to plug? I know you mentioned that you might have a music video coming out soon. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, so Go Home Baby has its very own music video. It's my first music video ever. And it's releasing on October 11th, which I'm really excited about, pretty soon. And from there, once that's out in the world and I've like pushed that as much as I feel comfortable pushing that, I have a second mixtape of, I've just had I spent all year making music and I've released like 3 songs. So I just kind of want to sit down and go through everything and get the good stuff together, and I'm just going to call it a mixtape because there's no cohesion. There's nothing that, it's just going to be what it is, you know?
Awesome. And then any live shows? I saw something on your Instagram about Navy Pier in November.
Yeah, Navy Pier November 10th. It's a free show at 3 p.m. and I think it's like in the middle of where everybody eats food.
You know, just a harp in the middle of a food court.
Yeah, let's go. Harp and drums, like hour-long like jazz jam set. It'll be very fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Anything else you got to add?
Have a beautiful day.
Yeah. And thank you very much for sitting down with me. It was, super fun to pick apart your music.
Yeah.
I've never talked to a harpist in this kind of setting, so it was really interesting. And then just to see how you have taken that knowledge and taken it all into this like production direction is really cool.
Thanks.
Really cool.
Thanks, it's really fun.
Yeah, so thank you.
Of course.